everyone, it's Annabelle and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at some of the orchids that we've got in bloom for the month of December, and this is going to be my last post for sort of a week or so over the holidays while we have a bit of a break, and then we will resume normal orchid videos with some of your suggestions. And wishing you all a very Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays, whatever you celebrate. I hope you have an amazing time. With that said, let's get on with looking at the orchids we've got in bloom for December. So to start off with, we're going to be taking another look at my beautiful Cattleya hybrid, which resembles very closely the Crystelle Smith. Unfortunately, I don't think it is this hybrid. It could possibly be a remake of the hybrid, but that hybrid is a miniature Cattleya and this is quite a big one. So it could be a remake of the hybrid that they tried that resulted in bigger offspring, or it could be a hybrid with that or with similar parentage. Either way, it's an absolutely beautiful NoID Cattleya. We've got a huge amount of blooms on it this time, and we've still actually got one bud to open. So I kind of wanted to show you a couple of close-ups of some of the flowers. There's a little bit of variation with the flowers. So on this particular blooming, what I tend to notice as a general rule with this one anyway is the later flowers to open do tend to be smaller. Some of the first flowers tend to open with the best kind of coloration and shape. It seems to be almost semi-peloric in some regards. So quite often with some of the flowers, and this happened the last few times it's bloomed, I'll get ones kind of more like this, that bloom with kind of this butterfly effect on the petals in the front there. It's a really beautiful kind of crystalline flower. We've got them kind of facing in all directions on this particular flower spike, and this spike has 4 blooms on. It's got this beautiful kind of crystalline structure, which I think is kind of coming across on camera. Can you see how glittery they are? Really, really beautiful. So this is kind of one of the later ones to open. And these are some of the earlier ones. You can see the colour has faded on kind of the earlier ones compared to the later ones. We've still got a bud here to open. The fragrance on this plant is incredible. It's one of my favourite Cattleyas, and it's just flowering so prolifically for me. It's such a vigorous grower. This is my favourite flower. It's kind of got the best structure and form, I think, in my opinion. And it's this beautiful contrast of kind of light pinkish mauve and yellow that I absolutely love. They're my favourite colour combinations on orchids. Just to show you kind of a zoomed out of the actual plant, this is one that we kind of repotted together fairly recently, and it's just maturing another growth at the back here, which I think is gonna probably spike, because it usually spikes without fail, to be honest. This has been partially lit by my Mars grow light. So I think that that's definitely helped with the flowering. Move the plant back a bit and hopefully get some better light on some of these flowers. Unfortunately, this one is kind of shading the rest of the plant. And that's the one with the really interesting, not peloric, but like really pretty petals there. And I absolutely love the fragrance of this plant. So that's my NoID Bifoliate Cattleya. Reliably blooms for me constantly. This is, I think it's 3rd or 4th blooming this year, and one of my favourite Cattleya type hybrids. Next up, we're going to stick with the theme of Cattleya types and talk about a recent acquisition of mine, which is the Rby Chief Cindy, and I'm not sure if this is a perfume variety or not. I recently got this from Spiceotic Plants and it had a bud when I got it, so this wasn't bloomed by myself as such, but I'm incredibly impressed at how long this flower has lasted. Pretty much opened soon after I got it, even with a repot, and it stayed open. It's faded a little bit. It was more of a kind of pink colour to start with, and then it's kind of washed out to more of a white, but the colour on the lip has been retained beautifully. And I think this is quite typical of Brassavola nodosa hybrids. When you mix them with kind of a coloured Cattleya, they kind of get this beautiful spotting on the lip. I think that that's the case. I will double check that this is a Brassavola nodosa hybrid, but the fragrance on it is so beautiful, and it's fragrant throughout the day and well into the evening and kind of night as well. So it really seems to inherit that trait from the Brassavola in its parentage, and the fragrance is just amazing. It's kind of a beautiful minty, perfumey smell, I absolutely love, and it kind of fills the whole growing room. It's so incredibly strong. So I definitely recommend, if you see this particular hybrid to grab it. It's so beautiful, such a nice fragrance. It is very strong, but I don't think people will find it offensive. So that's the Rby Chief Cindy. Next up, we're going to talk about the Dendrobium Tetragonum var giganteum. The giganteum refers to the size of the flowers relative to the size of the plant, not the actual plant. The plant itself is quite compact, as you can see, and this one was quite fussy for me and took a while for me to actually get it established. However, once it was established, it's just taken off, and it's got this really interesting flowering pattern. So initially started to produce buds inside a sheath that it had already developed on an older growth. I can tell which ones are the older growths because they were severely pitted when I got them, I think from spider mite damage. So initially these buds started developing in the sheath of an older growth, and then they started developing in other sheaths of older growths, and then in the sheaths of newer growths. And I'm hoping the newest growth to mature is this one, so I'm hoping it'll also spike from that. But at the moment we've got 8 buds on the plant. The newest growth to mature has 4 buds, the older growths have 2 buds each, and obviously we've got these flowers here. The flowers themselves have really shocked me because I didn't realise that the lip was going to be quite this beautiful and its beautiful pink contrast. It can be quite a variable species actually. It seems like there's quite a lot of species variation. I'm really happy with the result that I've got here. This one is a non-winter resting dendrobium, so it's a continuous grower and it's a warm, intermediate to warm grower. It was very fussy for me at first to get it established. It has these incredibly fine roots, and I'm going to try and show you an example if I can. You can see how moist I keep this. This is in a bark moss mix and we've got live moss growing at the top there. And if you just have a look there, that's one of its roots. They're incredibly fine. And it just absolutely loves moisture. I think that's kind of, I tried it in semi-hydro at first and it did not enjoy. If I can find a way of adding more moisture into my semi-hydro, maybe even in Ceramis, maybe it would enjoy it. But for now, I'm not in a hurry to change it because it did take a while to actually take off in my environment. If I show you some of the first growths that matured in my care, this is one of them. I think this was the first that it made for me, this little tiny one here, and then kind of made this one, and they've gradually got a little bit bigger, and that one, and this is the biggest growth that it's made for me, and obviously that's the one that it's got the most buds on. Something really interesting about the Tetragonum is the characteristic shape of the pseudobulbs that give it its name. So it's got really ridged, geometric shaped pseudobulbs. I don't know if I can show you. Can you see it's got like square edges? Really interesting shape. Maybe you can see it better on the fatter pseudobulb that it matured in my care. It's got these beautiful kind of ridged pseudobulbs that make it so interesting to grow. And reportedly the Tetragonum is very fragrant, and I've heard reports of it having kind of a beautiful vanilla-y fragrance. Unfortunately, mine doesn't seem to be exhibiting this. I have been checking it at various times of the day and it's grown under quite bright light, as you can see from some of the purpling on the other growths. It doesn't need that high light, and I've had to move it directly out of line of my grow light because it was getting quite purple. And I can kind of detect a very subtle, almost mentholy fragrance sometimes, sweet and mentholy, but nothing that really stands out. I don't know if it's because it's the first flowering from this plant, something about my care maybe, about getting established in my environment, or maybe it'll just take a while when all the rest of the buds are opening. Maybe I'll start to get a fragrance. Maybe it's a kind of a cumulative effect. So I'll report back, but for now I don't notice that much fragrance, but bear in mind that other people do report fragrance from this. So that is the Dendrobium Tetragonum var giganteum. Next up, we're going to go again with a good old phal that I've shown you guys quite a bit before, but I can't resist showing because the display just gets more and more impressive with time. So this is the Phalaenopsis happy Fang Sir or Fan Sir. So it's actually labelled as Happy Fang Sir, and I've seen it advertised a lot as this, so you may well find it under this name. However, I believe it is actually Happy Fan Sir. The Orchid Roots says Fan. A lot of retailers say Fang. I spoke to Michael about this, who first pointed this out to me, and I'd been a bit confused by the names and the various forms of the name. And he kind of suggested that potentially it could be a mistake going back to the original hybridizer, maybe even that they've put the wrong tag in, and then there are several European nurseries that I've seen it mislabeled at, but the Orchid Roots says Fan, so just bear that in mind when you're searching for it. It could be Happy Fan Sir, F-A-N, or it could be Happy Fang Sir, F-A-N-G. Either way, it's a beautiful, closer to species hybrid. It's relatively complex, but it does have species much closer in the parentage than, say, your complex hybrid phal from a supermarket. It produces these really long spikes and blasts buds along the spike until it gets to a suitable length, and then produces a cluster of flowers at the end of the spike. And you can actually see in there I've still got more buds forming, kind of lying in wait to continue this cluster. And same for this spike. So this is the second spike. And then the third spike there, which is starting to bud up. And we've also got a fourth spike. Last year I only got 2 spikes from it, so it's obviously doing well. Unfortunately, this spike has formed on the other side because I had to rotate it when it first started these spikes, because these have to hang off the edge of my shelf for it to physically work with my setup. So we've now got another one. I'm hoping I can get it to kind of arch over. I'm not going to fiddle with it too much because I've just done this with one of my Rhynchostylis giganteas that was doing the same, and I broke the spike, so I am going to leave it alone. I will not fiddle with this spike. But yeah, we've got 4 spikes starting, which is amazing. And this display will only get more impressive, so I will probably feature this again in my January What's in Bloom. It's gorgeous yellow that doesn't fade with these beautiful kind of freckling on the flowers, and I'll just get you up closer to one of the flowers. So close up of one of the flowers there, and this one is slightly fragrant. It's fragrant when you go up to it and smell it, but you wouldn't probably have it fill the room. I do notice it sometimes if I'm cleaning a shelf. I'll kind of think, oh, what's that smell? And it'll be this guy. And obviously the more flowers that it produces, the more kind of dramatic this effect is going to be. So it probably will get more fragrant, considering that we've now got 4 spikes coming with quite a lot of blooms. So that is a beautiful, beautiful hybrid, and I don't know if you can see, but it's got the most wonderful contrasting lip that kind of fades from really, really bright purple into more of a kind of orangey colour. That probably isn't going to show very well, but it's a really stunning lip on it. So that is the Phalaenopsis Happy Fang something Sir. Either way, it's a beautiful hybrid, and I definitely think if you can get hold of it, you should. Look at these flowers. Beautiful, aren't they? They just cheer up the whole room. Next up, we have the Rhynchostylis Gigantea cartoon variety, and I am actually in the process of making a separate spotlight video for this orchid and a comparison with the other Rhynchostylis Giganteas that I have and their flowerings. We've got around 40 flowers on this particular spike, which is not the most that they can do, but considering this is the first blooming from a recovering orchid, I'm really happy with it. The fragrance is not to my taste. The Giganteas in general, I'm addicted to them. I have so many, but I don't actually love the fragrance, which is very odd for me. Usually I would try and stick with orchids that have a nice fragrance, not just keep buying more of ones that I don't enjoy the fragrance of that much. But that is how hooked the Gigantea has me, with these beautiful clusters of, I mean, not that tiny flowers actually. They're sort of maybe 3 centimeters across. Absolutely beautiful. And the fragrance kind of reminds me a little bit on this one of lemon juice, but also kind of a really strong, spicy, musky fragrance. It's not as pronounced on this one as on, for example, the red variety, but it definitely has a kind of musky odour that reminds me a little bit of cat pee. I'm not gonna lie, I like lemon juice mixed with maybe a little bit of undertone of cat pee. I'm really sorry that is the description that comes to mind for this, but it's not as bad with the cartoon as for the other varieties of Gigantea that I've noticed, and I'm going to do a comparison video when they're all in bloom together as a little Gigantea spotlight and discuss the various fragrances. But for now, that is how I would describe it. There's definite lemony notes and spiciness, but there's a bit of an undertone that I don't particularly like with the Gigantea, and I think a lot of people kind of really love the fragrance, but there are some people also who kind of agree that it's not the nicest fragrance as well. So I think it is a very personal thing with the Gigantea. You'll either love it or not like it so much. Bear that in mind if you're very sensitive to fragrances. Maybe try and smell one before you buy it, because if you're really sensitive to it, you might have to chuck this one out or shut it into a spare room when it does bloom, which is kind of what we do. So when I've got the other two in bloom as well, the door will probably get shut to the spare bedroom that they live in. So that is the Rhyncho Stylish Gigantea variety cartoon, and I absolutely love the beautiful purple and white contrast that the cartoon has with the spots. Next up, we're going to talk about a flower which I absolutely love and that we're actually going to be doing a bit of a seedling variation project on, and this is the Phalaenopsis Bellina alba crossed with Tetraspis C1, and this one is a really beautiful primary cross that inherits some of the fragrance from the Bellina. It's got a very faint kind of floral, slightly lemony fragrance. Now it's not gonna fill the whole room, but it is really beautiful. Another thing that I absolutely love about it, as well as the colour, is this fuzzy little lip that it has. Which I just think is the cutest thing. I love the fuzzy lipped phals. And the colour is kind of faded on these particular blooms. I really wanted to show you this because it is forming more buds. And I bought a few seedlings of this cross because seedlings can vary quite dramatically of particular crosses. And I really wanted to see what the seedling variation was like on this cross, because some of the images online are absolutely stunning and some are kind of more like this, where it's kind of a more salmony pink. Now this has faded, and I will put a picture up on screen of when it first opened, but I have more buds on the way on this, and I've also got one of the other seedlings that I bought of this, which has just started budding, which I'm really excited about. So that way we can actually kind of look at seedling variation a little bit more in this cross, which I'm super excited about. And when it first opens, it's kind of a salmony pink, and it fades to this more kind of washed out mauvey pink. Still absolutely beautiful, and I love it regardless. So that is the Phalaenopsis Bellina alba crossed with Tetraspis C1. And yes, I have absolutely saved the best for last with this, in my opinion. This is the Dendrobium Jairak Spin Blue, and I got this one in a Classen haul back in October. Unfortunately, I was ill at the time, so I couldn't film the unboxing. Now, I don't think the colour of this is really coming out very well on camera, purely because of how glossy it is, I think. It's got quite small flowers that have this kind of antelope type effect to them. They kind of curl back, and I find it really beautiful. And the backs of the flowers are kind of a brownish colour, and inside the flowers we've got like a fuzzy lip and this kind of indigo purple, I would call it. It's not blue, obviously. We don't have blue orchids. We tend to have purple orchids that are quite close in some cases, but not actual blue. But this is kind of a more indigo colour, I would say, and it's really, really stunning. It's got the longest flower spikes, so they're absolutely huge. And this one I probably shouldn't have let bloom because it's a recent acquisition. It's got roots and it has established to some extent in semi-hydro, but it probably should have been allowed to establish more because I've started to get a leaf yellowing on that while it's blooming. So I think I am going to cut these spikes shortly. But I wanted to show you guys before I did that because it's just absolutely stunning. The flowers have been open a few weeks now, and we've still got a couple of little buds left to open at the end here. but I wanted to show you. It's such a beautiful colour. I absolutely love it. It's so glossy as well. Just beautiful. And I'd imagine when you've got bigger specimens of these, you can get the biggest, most beautiful displays from this. So that is the Jairak Spin Blue, and it was just starting one spike when I got it, and it's since started another spike. So yeah, I'm going to cut these blooms shortly, but that is that. Next up we have the Cattleya Tokyo Magic, which is another favourite of mine that blooms for me reliably 3 to 4 times a year. I have shown you this one in bloom before, but we've got quite the impressive bloom display this time round, so I thought I would show it again. Fragrance doesn't seem to be quite as strong this time. I guess it's maybe in less direct light than it was before. Beautiful yellow hybrid with a lovely yellow lip and contrasting kind of purple magenta stripe along the bottom of the lip. This one I got quite some time ago, and it's been incredibly vigorous. It's a unifoliate Cattleya. It produces 3 to 4 flowers usually per pseudobulb, but it's got multiple directions of growth, so we have multiple pseudobulbs flowering at the same time usually. And this one is not my favourite fragrance on a Cattleya, but if you enjoy really kind of spicy Cattleya fragrances, maybe you'll enjoy it more than I do. But either way, it is very strongly fragrant, especially in direct light. And really beautiful hybrid, and flowers really regularly for me, so I definitely highly recommend it. So that's the Cattleya Tokyo Magic. Next up we have this absolutely beautiful red Oncidium intergeneric, which I believe is some form of Burraghiara or Oncidiopsis due to the coloration and kind of shape. Now it reminds me a lot of the Oncidiopsis Cheyenne that I already had in bloom in a previous month, which I will link you to up in the corner and down below. However, it isn't. I bought it at the same time as the Cheyenne. Both are from the same supplier and the same nursery. But the Cheyenne is much more orange and red coloured and doesn't have this kind of almost Nellie Isla-ish lip shape. And the lip here is fringed with this pink, which kind of comes out a bit more pale on camera, but the tips of the petals and sepals are also tinged with the same kind of pinkish coloration. The lip itself does remind me of the Nellie Isla a little bit, that you kind of almost have that waterfall shape that you don't have with the Cheyenne. So I do think it is a different hybrid, but I'm not sure which. I believe Miss Orchid Girl also has this particular one, and I don't think she's found an ID either. So I'll keep you posted if I do find an ID, but for now it's just a beautiful Oncidium intergeneric, and it also has the most wonderful fragrance. Now it's not quite an Nellie Isla type of strength, but it does remind me of the Nellie Isla, and the Cambria or Oncidiopsis Cheyenne doesn't have any fragrance really, it's just more of a kind of light floral scent, but this one does definitely remind me of the kind of Miltoniopsis side, so I think there is some Miltoniopsis in there somewhere maybe. Anyway, it's a beautiful hybrid regardless of the fact that it's NoID. So this is the NoID red Oncidium intergeneric. Next up we have the Encyclia mariae crossed with citrina, and I did a really stupid thing and I got some new orchids and had some leftover insect spray, so I just did a quick like neem oil spray around this kind of shelving area, and the flower is now fading. That was yesterday. So I'm really sorry this isn't the perfect display. What I'll do is I will put a picture up on screen, because I did take a picture when it had just opened, so I'll put that up on screen. This is a really beautiful hybrid between two Encyclias, and it has the most beautiful, interesting veining on the lip. Lovely buttery yellow colour with kind of green veining in the lip, and it is such a beautiful hybrid. It doesn't fully open, but it's a really stunning flower compared to the size of the orchid as well. It has a really nice kind of slightly spicy floral fragrance that I really enjoy, and beautiful flower. So that's the Encyclia mariae crossed with citrina. I hope you've enjoyed this video today of what's been in bloom for December, and I hope you all have a really happy Christmas and enjoy your festive period. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like or subscribe to my channel for more regular orchid updates. and I will see you guys later. Bye!